I want to do a video on George Floyd. What's his name? It's on some issues basically that have been coming up, and a lot of people have made videos on it. So I figured I would. Now, I generally don't see many of these cases to have a commonality or an idea that certain people, police and stuff, have to do with like picking people out, I guess you could say. But I think generally it's just like a lot of people seem to want that to be the case, I feel. The reason I think a lot of people want that to be the case is because it's like, to me, I'm like, the guy is on tape, and his knee on someone's neck, and you're trying to say that he did this on purpose because he was black? Like, does that make any sense to you? Like, if you have any sense in you, does that make any sense? If you were gonna murder someone, that you would do it on TV, straight up, and the person is saying, I'm gonna die or I can't breathe, and expect to be able to get away with murder? No, that's not true. I don't think the guy came out and just. Then on top of it, I mean, to equate the fact that the guy killed him, or accidentally killed him, I guess you could say, because he was black. To me, I'm like, it's all wrapped up in this stuff where people have this in their minds that, uh, it's all because of like um, racism and stuff and things of that nature. But I feel like with this narrative, it's generally like basically like um, people who are like like presenting like black people as criminals, basically. Because they say police officers are racist. But you have to do something to get their attention, you see. And so that to me means more, they're basically saying that black people can't obey the law. More than actually saying police officers are in the wrong, in my opinion. It's not about them not being able to, um, follow the law, in my opinion. So that's in part my problem with the situation. Like, I think, obviously, the guy has his knee on a guy's neck, which is kind of like, why would you? That's a little bit too much there. But then he has it on his neck for 6 minutes after the guy has expired. And that is pretty crazy, okay? That's pretty messed up. That's really bad techniques as a police officer, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that he did that just because he was black and the other guy was white. That's not, that doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, you have to have actually a correlation, in my opinion. And like, I feel like the media tries to spin this, but then you'll see many different small cases where police officers go rogue with white people. So like, I never understood why anyone ever says that police officers go straight after black people when it's not true. It isn't. I mean, I think they go like, some hard handling police officers do this to black people, to white people, to anybody who's superb. If you think of like how police officers are, how they do their job, how they execute it, is basically they find their victim and their perp. Once they find their perp and they identify who the perp is, now it's their time to get them. Now, the point of it is getting the perp is like a little more of a matter of, sometimes it is harder to manage because you have to go under certain guidelines. Sometimes they go outside of those guidelines. And I don't think it's just because someone's black that they're doing that. It's more so maybe it's a tougher situation in this case, or maybe they don't have the proper training, or maybe this is just what they prefer to do. Maybe they're just not a good police officer. That has nothing to do with somebody being black. You got what I mean? So, that's generally my issue. Is just like people saying it's a black and white issue just because there's a white police officer, a white police officer, sorry, and a black perpetrator who died, you know. And then, like, when people like like, people like associate like black people with being like people who run from the law and stuff and are outside of the law, it paints black people as criminals. And I mean, like, I don't understand why anyone would hug or love or embrace this idea if you're black, unless you're a criminal and you want to normalize your bad behavior. But if you're not a criminal and you're not trying to normalize your bad behavior, then, you won't really feel like, being a criminal has anything to do with being black, you know. And associating an issue with the police kind of asserts that. Another thing that I wanted to address was whole issue with Black Lives Matter. Like, obviously, I am so not for them, obviously, because to me, they always try and address it like black white issue, right? But they won't address so many other issues, and they say Black Lives Matter, right? But police officers killing black people who have committed crimes is not the number one killer for black people. I mean, for one, abortion is our number one killer. We have astronomical numbers on that. And no, you don't say a word about that, right? And that's our number one killer. So, I mean, like, if you really think our lives matter, but you want to implement our lives being taken before we're even born. So, how much do you really care about our lives? Yeah, I don't think you really do. Then, secondarily, there's like other issues, like, for example, our medical care and, our birth rates and our matrilineal mortality, things of that nature. And it's just like, you never address that. And then, most obviously, the crime in our communities. This Memorial Weekend, we all know what happened in Chicago with all the people being murdered, many of those people being black. And it's like, there's a lot of crime, and I mean, like, most of the time when black people get murdered, who is it by other black people? You're not addressing the fact that Black Lives Matter, but these people were just eliminated and their lives are gone because some black person did not think Black Lives Matter, apparently. So you're saying that Black Lives Matter, but you're not really focusing like on the issues that make Black lives not matter. The only time you really care about Black Lives Mattering is when like you're talking about the whole situation with police officers and black people. Generally, it seems like it's an image they prefer. They prefer like black criminals, black thugs, basically. Their lives matter. So it should really, to me, mean that black thug lives matter, but not really black lives matter. That's just how I've always seen it. I've never really seen it like where it was. Oops, sorry, nice words, bro. Um, it never really felt like it was like um meaning that Black lives really truly mattered. Because it's like, if it really truly mattered, it wouldn't be that, like, it wouldn't be like that they were only focusing on those kind of issues. It would only be like they would focus on all of the issues, but I don't really seem to care about those issues. To me, it's seemingly based on just like the crime and stuff that people do and trying to escapade them and try to shine a light on police as if they're doing something wrong so then they can kind of like have their behavior more acceptable. I just don't really agree with that. You know? I don't know. So, there's another issue I've wanted to address. There's a third one. I'm trying to think. Um, so yeah, that was another thing. With like many police brutality situations, you'll see where if it doesn't line up, they kind of just ignore it from being a race issue. Example being like the whole situation with that Somali police officer who killed that white girl. It was like they did not focus on the fact that he's a black man and she's a white woman. You know, they didn't focus on that, even though it was a race difference. I guess to them they thought black people can't hate white people, but they didn't really realize the whole history of different black people. For example, I mean, for one, black American people, sometimes we come from different communities anyway. Like, some of us come from families where we don't like white people, and then some of us praise white people. That's where colorism comes from and all that stuff. But, I mean, some countries, like some nationalities, some people have always had some types of racism, and they don't have to be white. This is the whole reason why people don't understand Asians can be racist, Hispanics can be racist, Africans can be racist, Indians can be racist, etc. Anyone can be racist. It's not just white people who can be racist. But it's like, for me, I've noticed that, like, for one, I feel like with Somalian people, we know, like, the history of Somalia. Yeah, I know a lot of people do not. That's a major problem, I feel like. Because it's like, for one, like, many people don't realize that in Somalia they had slavery back to the 1940s. They had racism, particularly against black people, and they've had racism against white people. They've had racism against both sides. If you know anything about Somalians, there's a whole weird debate. People like to call them black, but when they take certain tests, they're really in between black and Caucasian. So anyway, um, they generally, if you talk to many of them, they tend to try to associate the people they enslaved with basically other Africans that have the same phenotype, basically a full African phenotype, you know. And you'll see the same is made for white people, you know, some negative connotations against them as well. So they are racist people. Yet nobody really even addressed that. We always say with white people in America that, oh, the history of racism in our country, but we won't focus on it when it has to do with a black and white situation and somebody of another race dies if the perpetrator is black. That is messed up. I mean, if it's only a racial issue, if the white person is the one who killed the black person, why can't it be in the other reverse situation? Especially from a person who's from a place that has often hated, you know, white people and black people for that matter. And I mean, there's another point of this too. Is that like we see quite, many, quite a lot of Somali people who, they generally are like have quite a few incidences. I'm trying to find a polite word. They have a lot of incidences where they do go out and kill many white people. So is it really that shocking that some Somali police officer did that? And could we gather that it might be a racial motivation? I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it doesn't have to be in the case of a situation like Freddie Gray's case or George Floyd's case. I don't think any of those cases it has to do with a black and white issue. I just think that it happens to be that the black person dies and the white person is a police officer. Now, the thing is also on top of that is it's not just black people who die at the hands of police. It's just that the media only shows people who basically, you know, are the black person who died and the white person as a perpetrator. That's not always the case. We see this one case where this guy, he was a drug dealer, whatever, um, and he was white, and he was not acquiescing with the arrest. He's driving away, and police officer shoots him and kills him. Did anyone really have a big uproar over this situation? No. They didn't because, well, it was a white person, and he was selling drugs. Nobody really cared that he died because he was committing a crime. And, it was just whatever. It's kind of the same thing here, only we just are acting like black thug lives are more important. And they're committing the same crimes, and they're dying, and then, well, they're dying because they committed those crimes and aren't acquiescing with the apprehension. So to me, I just think that it's just really silly that people really make this out to be a race issue. I think it only is a race issue to those people who believe in those weird stuff. I see this weird stuff, like, for example, I hear a lot of black people who talk about that word they call snitches or whatever and stuff, things like that. When they have that kind of ideology and stuff, well, it kind of like you're trying to associate criminality basically with being black or something. And I mean, like, not all of us are criminals just because we're black. And I feel that's racist. I don't care who's saying it, but I just feel it's racist if you're going to associate me with a criminal just because I'm black. I'm not pro criminal. I don't think that criminals should be let out of prison. I don't care what race they are. If they committed the crime, I want them to stay in prison. Um, I don't really, I don't really think that it should be that, you know, uh, that it should be where people will bring up like black issues and try and act like, you know, that has to do with like crime, drugs, things of that nature, and how to legalize. When you do things like that, I mean, I run away from that. Secondarily, I don't appreciate that being associated with him because doesn't have to do with being black. In fact, like for me, like my family, we come from a line. My mother's parents, for example, they were very partial, I guess you could say, to the police. They called the police often if they saw like anybody. It didn't matter what race you were, but I mean, if you're black and you were selling drugs, you committing a crime, stealing, whatever you're doing, okay, have weapons you're not supposed to have, whatever. They called the police. They were, I guess, what they call big snitches or what. I don't think anything's wrong with that, really. I mean, like, to me, like, that someone's against criminality. That's how society's supposed to be. People act like black issues are associated with crime. That's just something that really bothers me. Also, another thing, like I said, is that I feel like that a lot of people seem to be like, I don't know, like, there's like a lot of people who are more or less like stuck on like race to me. And I feel like it's really weird. One, like, so, like, if someone hates black women and a black woman dies, they'll try and be like, oh, yeah, I'm happy, I'm not gonna give a care or anything. Or, like, in this case with George Floyd or whatever, I've heard quite a few people act like they don't really care that he, was able to expire in this way, to die in this way, because he was a black man or whatever, and they feel like black men don't help them out or something, or they've never been beneficial to them or whatever. I mean, aside from whatever issue you have with someone who's a black man, black woman, white woman, if they die in a situation like this, I'm gonna care. I don't care about the George Floyd situation any more than if he was a white man. See, to me, I just think it shouldn't be that he had a knee on his neck and he was unable to breathe. I don't really care what race. You get what I mean? Like, that should happen to anyone. So I don't understand why anyone would care more or care less just because of his race or his gender or anything else. I mean, like, for one, I mean, he was committing a crime, and some people say it's not that big of a crime. Okay. But I'm just saying, as far as what happened, and not about that, just about the crime of it. Uh, well, not the crime, like no, it is a crime, I guess. Negligence or whatever. But, like, the actual arrest and the whole execution of his death. To me, I feel like that is specifically, having to do with why I have an issue with what happened. And I honestly think, of course, yes, he should have been fired, and he should have charges, of course. Do we have to keep him in prison long? Why? That's what I like. Why would he have to stay in prison long? If he stays in prison long, I mean, we're keeping up space for some guy who accidentally killed somebody on camera. Like, obviously he didn't mean to do this. I don't think he'll intend to do it again. And I don't think he's really a threat to society. So I don't think that we should, like, try and keep him in there a long time. I don't think that. I think it just should be charges because you shouldn't do that to people. And that's about it, really. I just think it's kind of like puerile to try and say, oh, just because I don't like a specific thing, or somebody did me wrong who was a man or a black person or a black man or whatever, I'm not gonna care just because of this. I'm like, I just care just as much if you were Asian, black, Hispanic, white. I don't really care what his race was. I don't really care what his gender was. For goodness sakes, you can actually identify as another gender tomorrow anyway, so we don't even know what his gender was. So, I mean, I just don't care. And by the way, that was a joke. Um, but yeah, to me, I just don't really care. You know, to me, I don't care about that. To me, it's just the action of knee on neck for 6 minutes after the man expired. And I don't know why he thought he could put his knee on someone's neck and they would survive. That's basically all my concern or problem or issue with the situation was. But I don't think it means that it's a race issue. I don't think it means that, the guy intentionally did it. I don't think that, uh, there's a issue with the police versus black people. I just don't think any of that correlates, really. I think people want there to be such an issue so then they can excuse their crimes. But that doesn't mean that it is. It's just an excuse that the media makes up. It's just an excuse that many criminals make up. It's an excuse that many black people who are criminals make up. That's generally what it is, in my opinion. And I don't really see how someone could associate this with that. I mean, with many discrimination issues and cases, it's like you need way more evidence of there being an issue like this. But when things like this happen, we just slap it on as it's a white and black issue. Like to me, that's what I don't like. It's like you just slapped it on as a white and black issue just now, but you know very well that it wasn't any proof that that was the case, other than you saw a white person and you saw a black person die. Well, a white police officer and black person die. And that's all you needed to prove that it was a white and black issue. And I just don't like that. I mean, you're so quick to think that. Why don't we be quick when black people kill white people then? Why don't we? We might as well. So that's generally what I'm going to say on this video. I'm going to be done. It's long enough. Um, yeah. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye.